As many of you know, one of the most famous businesses that calls Grand Rapids home, my hometown, is, of course, Meijer, the big retailer that has some 209, I think it's like 219 stores all throughout the Midwest. Meijer is in deep doo-doo. And the reason why is because of something that actually happened last year at their location in Seven Hills, Ohio, just outside Cleveland. James Dennison, a 16-year-old boy who worked in the deli department, was arrested for stealing $110 worth of food. And they were mostly fruit cups and chicken nuggets. $110 frickin' dollars within the span of 3 months. And according to James, he said that the food was going straight into the garbage anyway because they were either expired or close to expiration anyway. So, and he needed the food to get through his shift. So the video has now surfaced online, and it is definitely not a friendly video to watch. The guy, the manager, the cop, all these people were smiling and laughing as this poor guy is being arrested. And and they were happy that he was going to go straight to prison for theft, even though the food was going to go straight to the garbage. It was going to expire. So anyway, the rest of the story was that James, number one, James is autistic. And simply put, I think in a way, a lot, these people were smiling, they were laughing, carrying on, because, we're gonna put this retard into jail. And it's like, yeah, nothing like profiling somebody with a disability. How cute. And I know how, folks, I'm autistic too, and I know how it feels to be profiled. I've been called retard, I've been called fag, I've been called all these hateful names, my entire life. And I know, I've been called a loser, I've been bullied, it was like I mentioned this not too long ago, that I was profiled by a cop, not a cop, but a mall cop at Rivertown Crossings here in Grand Rapids, over in Grandville. And the reason why was because I was carrying around one of those Osmo mini cams, and this nasty, disgusting mall cop, female mall cop, 9 million tattoos on her body. She had, in the great words of the great Dave Barber, more chins than a Chinese phone book. If you watch my YouTube page, I have a couple of these old mall videos from a couple of years ago. And that was a huge reason why I stopped making them. It was because of that. The people like them who went around and said, you've been putting your camera under girls' skirts. And I said, no, I don't do that. 2 people complained. Okay, you want me to show you the video? I don't do shit like that. I don't want to. Yeah. And then she said, if you do it one more time, I'm going to call the cops on you. And it hurt me because of all the rejection I've gotten in my life and all the people who have talked behind my back. And, it just goes on and on. This is why I don't have many friends. Period. End of story. And, I have that part of me that says I want to show the world what I go through. But in a way, it's kind of moot because, there is one really good thing that happened since that incident, and that was the fact that Rivertown was sold to another company, Brookfield Properties, which was the former owner, they're notorious. They do not know how to run a good shopping mall. I mean, they are down to one mall here in Michigan, and that's Grand Traverse Mall, and they just lost Macy's. They had multiple stores over the years. It's like there's really no good reason to go to Grand Traverse Mall anymore unless you want to go to Hot Topic, and that's it. Or FYE, or what little options there are at the food court. So anyway, the rest of the story kind of goes like this. So Grand Traverse, and I heard that the new owners have done a great job of trying to renovate the mall. They're trying to bring more stores, but it's too little too late. I don't go there anymore. I haven't been there since this incident. And it's like, you know, if you want to talk shit about me, fine. You know, you lost me as a customer for good. And now, the same shit with the rest of Meijer. So anyway, yeah, a lot of people are now saying that they will not go to Meijer anymore because of what happened to young James. And the fact that, you know, this poor kid was bullied just because of the fact that he was autistic. And not only that, Meijer is a company, you know, privately owned company worth, how much are they worth? $16 billion. It's true. Meijer is a $16 billion company, $16 billion family. Their revenues are $20 billion a year. And I'm like, what is fucking wrong with these people? Don't they care about their workers? And when I thought about this, I thought about the history of Meijer. You know, Meijer started in 1934, and the guy who founded Meijer was a Dutch immigrant. His name was Hendrik Meijer, and Hendrik's story was that he was a Dutch immigrant. He came from the Netherlands. The Netherlands was loaded with factories that, you know, people were getting injured on the job all the time. It was just a hellhole to work there. And the companies just didn't care about their workers. So what happened was Hendrik decided to move to America. He moved to Holland, Michigan. And then he moved from Holland to Greenville. And this is the reason why he moved away. It was because Greenville, so the story was Holland, Michigan, you know, it's a town loaded with Dutch people. It was too conservative for him. And he would talk about people like Eugene Debs and, you know, in all these factories that mistreat their workers, and Upton Sinclair. And people would tell him to go away. Oh, we don't want to talk about that in our town. Oh, this is America. We don't talk about that here. Quit being a communist. So this is what he did. He moves to this town called Greenville. And there he becomes a town barber. He makes decent money. And then what happens is he realizes that his barbershop was big enough to support a second business. He just needed that small space. You know, all he needed was a barber chair and maybe another chair for customers to sit down while they wait to get their hair cut. And this is what happens. He goes into so what happens is during the Great Depression in 1934, nobody was renting out that property. He goes to a warehouse in Grand Rapids. He buys up a couple $100 worth of groceries on credit, and then he resells them for dirt cheap. And he ends up becoming far more profitable than the other grocery stores in town people loved him. He had a great personality, and his son Fred was working there. He was only 14 at the time, and he was a hard worker. A lot of people loved Fred. And, the store became so popular that they outgrew their location. They actually had to build on to that location a couple of times. And then in 1946, the original store burnt down, but they built again in another part of town. And then they added on all these little supermarkets in, other towns like Cedar Springs and Ionia. And then what happens is they build their first store in Grand Rapids, and they pretty much adopt Grand Rapids as their hometown. And then in 1962, they built this store called Thrifty Acres at 28th and Kalamazoo. The store becomes a smash. And all the new stores that they were building from now on were all Thrifty Acres stores. And it becomes the hallmark of the company. I believe the last Meijer supermarket closed in 1990 or so in Grand Rapids. Although they've been opening up grocery-only stores as of late, like Bridge Street Market here in Grand Rapids. So anyway, the rest of the story was that, I told you about Hendrik Meijer. He was a hardcore progressive. And I guess he wasn't very religious. But Fred was still a supporter of the unions. He was still a union guy. He was a guy who, who treated his workers quite fairly. Another thing about Fred was that even though he was wealthy, he didn't live in a big house. He didn't drive a fancy car. As a matter of fact, Fred was known to drive cars until they started to break down. And when they started to break down, that was the best time to buy a new car for him. He was a simple man. Although he died a freaking billionaire. But now you look at the modern day Meijer, and I'll tell you, I have to wonder if both Fred or even Hendrik would even shop there anymore. Especially after what happened to that poor kid. A kid who was arrested just because he took $110 of food that was, borderline spoiled anyway. He just wanted to, it was headed straight to the garbage. What was the problem? And this is not the first time Meijer has done this. I knew two people with disabilities that Meijer kind of screwed over. And they both don't work for them anymore. One person was deaf, and I guess, I'm trying to remember what happened. This was years ago. She didn't show up to work one day because they changed the schedule on her. And so I guess what happened was they docked her because they didn't tell her the schedule or nothing. So, and, because she's deaf and, she was a greeter actually. And what happened was she had to call this special needs hotline that Meijer gives to their special needs employees, and they had to fix everything. And then there was another situation with another woman I once knew. And I still know her today. I mean, we're still actually friends. But so the story was, this is a girl who has a disability where she can't stand for a very long time. And, she has, it's a disorder that where her body, she has this very rare condition where her body does not properly digest protein. And what happened was She can't stand for a long period of time. She has to take a lot of medications. And they put her on the cash register. And she asked them for a chair. They were like, nope, no chairs for you. And then they also, and she couldn't even take her meds to the cash register. And she started having some type of condition where she was starting to feel faint. She needed her meds right then and there. She had to try to get somebody to cover for her. And she had a giant line at her station. And nobody was there to take care of her. And yeah, she was very close to passing out. And it's like, what? This is so fucked up right there. She even told me that she'd rather work at Walmart because of this. And I hate to say it, but for years and years, the reason why I preferred Meijer over Walmart was because, Walmart had, the family that owns Walmart is far richer. They're worth $500 billion. Back in the 90s, they wouldn't sell music. They had the warning labels on it, the tipper sticker. They wouldn't even sell anything having to do with Howard Stern. And of course, they sold guns. And, Sheryl Crow even wrote a song about it. And got that album banned from Walmart. And it's like, fuck them. But yet, what's funny is you look at Walmart today, and, their current commercial, it has Walton Goggins in it. He's the guy from that hit HBO show, whatever that fucking show's called. Yeah, he's everywhere these days, pretty much. And, of course, they use that song from The Who. Who are you? Who the fuck are you? It's like, wow. So it's okay to use a song that has a swear word in it, but, we can't sell the album uncensored. Fuck Walmart, man. I can't believe some people actually will shop there. Whatever. But the funny thing is, like I said, Meijer is far more supportive of the Republicans than Walmart is. And what's funny is that Walmart, I believe 51% of their political fundings do go to the Republicans. Well, it's like almost 90% for Meijer. But then again, you have to remember that Peter Meijer, who used to be a U.S. rep for this Grand Rapids area, he was a hardcore Republican. But at least there was one quality to him. And that was the fact that he voted to impeach Donald Trump. After the fact that his minions were trying to knock down his door, and here he was trying to hide under a table. He was about ready to die, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he did the right thing. But of course, it pretty much cost him his job. Of course, our area is now served by Hillary Scholten, who is actually a Democrat, though she's pretty much a moderate. Not only that, she also, believe it or not, even though she's a Democrat, I guess somebody tried to put on the table an impeachment thing for Trump, and she voted against it. Cunt. And then, but what bothers me maybe the most is Meijer. So let me tell you what happened with Meijer. Here in this area, we have 4 TV stations that do the news, and it's not one of the top headlines. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? The Grand Rapids Press did report it, but not Channel 3, not Channel 8, not Channel 13, not 17. Oh, we can't talk about that because Meijer is one of our sponsors. Fuck you. And what's even worse is that right now, Channel 8, the owners of Channel 8, which is Nexstar, they're in the process of buying the owners of Channel 13, which is WZZM. And I'll tell you this right now. If the merger happens, we're going to be down to 3 sources for news. One of the news departments is going to close. And I'll bet you that under Trump's aegis, it's going to happen. Now, I understand. Meijer has apologized. They said they should have handled this way differently. It was not professional on their part. But I say, we the people have the right to shop wherever we goddamn well please. I understand. No grocery store is going to be perfect. Okay? I mean, a lot of people say that shopping at mom and pop stores are a lot better because, mom and pop is not wealthy. And even though, the price of milk there and the price of everything there is a little bit more per item, I mean, it is what it is. The reality is that, even mom and pop stores have their problems. I shopped, when I was a kid, I shopped at a store in Elk Rapids, Michigan called Village Market. It was owned for 51 years by a guy named Rick Young. Rick passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was 78 years old. And a lot of people talked about how much of a rocket for the community he was by giving a lot of money to charity. And, he would give to churches and, the local schools. He was always a proud sponsor of community events. And, he was a good guy, I will admit, but he was also kind of a stringent businessman due to the fact that he never wanted to talk about how he bought the store. I just learned how he got the money to buy Village Market back in 1974. It used to be called Don Supermarket, and it was owned by a guy named Donald Pizzolo. The gas station. So the story was there was a gas station across the street from the current Village Market. It was where the laundromat would become years later. And in 1955, Don built a new store, and it would become the Village Market. Well, it was actually called Don Supermarket, but anyway, he got an affiliation with Spartan Stores, and then what happened was Don got sick. I guess he was forced to sell the store, and anyway, what happened was he had to tell Spartan that he was selling, and he ended up. So what happened was, Rick Young so the story was Rick Young's wife at the time, Linda. Her uncle worked for Spartan, and I guess he told them about this Don Supermarket, made very good money. It was the biggest supermarket in Elk Rapids. There was only one other supermarket at the time in the village, and it was this meat market that was actually they were not with IG at the time. They were Viking Foods. Ed & Sons Market, owned by Sonny Scheiback, who had his arm ripped off in Vietnam by a hand grenade. Yeah, nice guy. Great butcher. So what happened was, now here's the thing about Rick Young. He was, he had no money. He and Linda allegedly lived in like a garage in Pontiac, Michigan by Detroit. So what happened was, excuse me, Rick had a friend named Harold Prince, and Harold was actually quite wealthy. Apparently, the story I heard was that his wife got killed in an accident, and the state of Michigan actually had to pay him a couple $1 million. So what does Rick do? He convinces Harold to give him some of the money and become partners in this grocery store up in Elk Rapids. So they buy the store, and eventually they rename it A&L Village Market for Harold's new wife named Alice, which by the way was spelled Allyse, and Rick's wife Linda, L. A&L Village Market. Now, the store made very good money, and Rick, I guess, was a very aggressive man when it came to business ownership. I did hear that the relationship was a little sour, so Rick found a way to take over Harold shares of the store, and I heard it wasn't real pretty, and Rick kind of screwed him over. So when Rick became lock, stock, barrel owner of Village Market, he dropped the A&L, obviously. Linda would years later dump him and take a lot of his money, and but yeah, she was pretty much a gold digger at this point. So anyway, the rest of the story was that Rick, what's funny was, when he bought the Village Market with that guy's money, he had nothing. And yet, he became one of the wealthiest guys of Elk Rapids. But he was also quite a giver as well. But you see, it's like, he was an aggressive man in terms of business. And he didn't, not everything that he did was good. I will admit, I hated the fact that he convinced Elk Rapids schools to, close the, force all the freshmen and sophomores into having a closed lunch when the new lunchroom opened at Elk Rapids High School 30 years ago, which pissed me off because it meant 2 more years of being bullied at the lunch table, having kids steal my food and just being total assholes. But the reality was this, it is what it is when you live in a small town, So, anyway. But the rest of the story is this. I think this weekend, back to Meijer. But you have to realize that in a way, Rick was the lesser of the two evils between him and Meijer. Of course, Meijer now has a store on M72 in Williamsburg. And it's a big store, too. It's about 10 times bigger than the Village Market in Elk Rapids. And I've never been inside that Meijer. I don't know if I ever will. But, of course, it's also a reason why there's a bunch of fucking roundabouts on M72 now. But, anyway, all I can say is, Meijer... I know that Meijer has made a shit ton of mistakes over the years, but they need to realize that the apple has fallen very far from the tree. And shame on them for what they did to that poor kid. I hope they will learn their lesson in the end. James, I feel sorry for James. And I hope that he's feeling a lot better these days. I hope he will. I hope that he will see closure in all this. I hope that people, and I know Meijer has apologized, but will be enough. Sometimes they think that, let's face it, an apology sometimes is, just a tiny little Band-Aid on a big bunch of hurt. So, anyway, I gotta get going. I had a long day today. I just wanted to rant about how fucked up Meijer is. I probably won't shop there this weekend. I love Costco. I'll probably do a lot of Costco shopping this weekend. Costco's definitely the lesser of all the evils in retail. They are big Democrats. They support unions. They have cheap gas, good deals on everything. I am glad to be a member. My mother renews it every year for my birthday. That's all I really want from her. So, anyway, I'm out of here. Good day, good luck. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye, everyone.